Welcome to Balance Health Now, the podcast where your health takes center stage and you finally feel seen and heard. I'm your host, Sydney Torres, a functional health detective and functional blood work specialist, dedicated to those of you who've been told your labs are normal, but you feel far from it. Whether you've been dismissed by doctors or you're struggling to understand why you don't feel well despite normal labs, you're in the right place. So if you're seeking answers to what are my next steps, let's navigate this path together. Each episode offers valuable insights, actionable recommendations, and gives you tools you need so you can redefine your health. Join me and let's balance your health now. Hello and welcome to another episode of Balance Health Now. Today we are going to be talking about that season of life. Yes, ladies, menopause. The hot flashes, the mood swings, the unexpected weight gain. But I want to say there is a silver lining with all of this. Today, I have my very special guest, Sarah Thomas, and she's going to share tips and ways to boost our metabolism during this menopause season. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. How are you?
I'm fabulous. Thank you so much for having me.
I just want to hear, before we get into the juicy stuff, I just want to learn a little bit more about you and how you just got really involved with women's health.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been quite a journey for me personally. And, I won't take you all the way back to the beginning, but I was a overweight child. I was also an anorexic teenager. I was an over-exercising young adult. I did the eat less, workout more approach for decades of my life. And so I like to just lead by saying I did everything wrong before I started to do things right. I've been in the wellness industry for about 27, almost 28 years now. And I've learned and grown with my knowledge and with just life experiences. I'm also a fitness instructor and I do nutrition coaching. And so, with all of that said, just because we have the certification and the expertise doesn't mean that we do the things right either. So I really started getting into women's health and specifically when I was going along my own journey of what am I doing wrong? Like, what are the pieces that are missing? Because I'm eating healthy, and I hear that from so many ladies. I'm eating fairly healthy. I'm working out, but what was I doing wrong? Because I was feeling fatigued. I was tired every day. I was irritable. And as I got older in my 30s, I started to pack on some more pounds, which, was just a snowball effect of like, you're not feeling well. And then your clothes aren't fitting and you're not sleeping. And so all of that to say that I really started putting puzzle pieces together and how metabolism fits in and how hormones fit into the puzzle and how we can really create a bigger outlook of what wellness looks like. And so through my own journey and through my own journey of perimenopause, I really started to figure out what that meant as far as what we should do as we get older, because what we're doing in our 20s is awesome. It's fine. It's great, but it doesn't work well as we get older. And it is because of, we're talking metabolism today, has a lot to do with metabolism, has a lot to do with those hormonal changes that are on a roller coaster ride as we go through. And so my personal journey has a lot to do with how my business started and then really how my business has morphed to where it is today. We're really more for the perimenopausal, menopausal woman than we are like, the late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, it's just such a challenging time because when I speak to a lot of ladies, they're trying to do things that they did back in the 20s. And obviously, as we get older, things change, metabolism and all that. So I think that would just be a really good starting place. If you could just break down that myth of eat less and work out more.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is such a myth because, let me just start with, we're looking big picture at this. So it has to do with the calories in, calories out equation, right? That we've been taught forever. And if you look at it mathematically, that makes sense, right? If you eat 1,500 calories a day and you expend, if you work off 1,600 calories a day, well, you're in a calorie deficit. And so you should, by math standards, lose weight, right? Because you are doing more than you're eating. And I say this all the time, but the bottom line is we're not math equations. We are human beings. And so if it were simple, if it were, well, it can be simple. So I want you to feel like this is super complicated and complex. But if it were, yes, we're math equations, then that would be easy. We would just, undereat, exercise more, or just move our body throughout the day. And we would be walking around a society that was not overweight. That's not the case. It's not the case. And the fact is, most women are under eating. And the majority of American women, at least 80% of American women, are overweight. So given that, that's not working for us. And so there are a lot of reasons why, but just to kind of break it down a little bit for you, you can undereat and work out more. And what happens if you're chronically under eating is your hormones are all over the place. Your cortisol, your stress hormone is high. And I'll push all other hormones aside right now and just talk about cortisol. If your stress hormone is high all the time, chronically high, then your body is in fight or flight mode. It's in starvation mode. So it will hold on to everything it has. It was created to do that. Centuries ago was created to do that. We were created to have cortisol raise. And so when it does raise, we're in that, okay, hold on to everything. Hold on to all the fat. Hold on to all the food storage that you have, because we don't know when it's going to be given that fuel again. That's how we were created. And so when we are walking around now in our modern age of chronic stress, then our body is still in that fight or flight, and it doesn't know when it's going to be able to pull that cortisol down. And so you can undereat all day long and your stress will be high and you will carry on excess weight. And I know it doesn't make sense because math wise, it doesn't make sense, but we're complex. We have hormones. We have the metabolism piece that is not working together in what I call that wellness puzzle to make it all make sense. And so, not math equations, we have those hormones. The metabolism is also a big thing, because when we are under eating throughout the day, and again, chronically under eating, then our metabolism slows down. There's a lot of different scientific words behind this, but our energy thermosynthesis. So when we are doing more and eating less, basically our body is saying, okay, don't burn off all those calories, right? So let's say you go for a 30-minute walk and you burn 300 calories. Well, if you're chronically under eating, your body's going to say, whoa, 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 hold on. We're not going to burn that many calories because we're chronically under eating. So your body's talking to itself, metabolism wise and hormones, if that makes sense in the big picture.
Yeah, and thank you for just kind of really breaking that down and breaking down that myth. I just kind of curious, what are some of your tips like that you do when you are stuck in that fight flight?
Mhm.
Just give us like one or two things that you do to kind of calm down your nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question, because we're all walking around in some sort of chronic stress. And if we are not in tune to it, it snowballs into bigger things. And so I'm a huge advocate for figuring out what works for you to calm, to de-stress throughout your day. I have a lot of members who say, I love to sit down in a cozy corner and read a book. Like for me, I fall asleep. And so that's not super soothing. Now, sleep is great, but that's not super soothing to my mind, because I struggle with just sitting and reading. But it is important for you to find what is going to calm your nervous system. So meditation, you can do yoga. Again, I'm not a big meditator. I have a hard time quieting my mind. That doesn't mean I shouldn't practice it, but finding time to quiet your mind. I personally do this well by taking a bath or sitting in a sauna. That allows me to sit. It requires me to sit and be without falling asleep. And it allows me to just de-stress. I don't have any electronics around me. I don't have my phone. Nothing allows my body to go, or in my mind to go elsewhere. And so finding what works for you. I also use walking. I walk every single day. Sometimes it's a 10-minute, 3 10-minute sprints throughout my day. Not sprinting, but sprints as in 10-minute intervals when I'm walking. Or other times it's, an hour all at once, depending on what my day looks like. The other big one I would say here is sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep in your day, in your week, and you're walking around sleep deprived, you cannot regulate your nervous system. Sleep is our body's way to reset. Sleep is our body's way to de-stress. Sleep is our body's way to regenerate neurons in our brain. It allows our muscles to reset. It allows our muscles to rebuild overnight. If we're skimping on sleep, nothing will change. And so if we cannot fix our sleep and we cannot get to a point where we're sleeping at least 7 hours a night, nothing will change. And I firmly believe that. And I will just say from my own personal experience of being sleep deprived at times in my life and allowing chronic stress to sneak in, just simply going back to basics and saying, okay, everything else can wait. I'm going to bed. I'm getting the sleep will help everything else snowball in the direction that we want it to snowball in.
Yeah, and I just really want to highlight what you just said, because that is something I preach from the mountaintop is sleep. I tell clients, if you are not sleeping and if your nervous system is, stuck in that fight, flight, if you are not calm, you could have the best supplements, you could have the best protocol, you could be eating the cleanest diet in the world, but your needle is not going to move like you want it to move. It's going to move a little bit, but you're not going to have like that really deep restorative healing. So yes, making sure you're getting at least the 7 hours of sleep a night and just really removing all of those distractions from your room, because I know I am so guilty of taking my phone into my room and telling myself, oh, I'm just going to scroll for 10 minutes. Yeah, I look up, it's like, no joke, like 12 o'clock. So I really have been super disciplined with really keeping my cell phone out of my bedroom. Trying to find different calming techniques. What I like to do is I do the tapping, and I find just doing like the tapping sequence really helps calm me down. And like Sarah said, really finding what works for you, because a lot of times when we have a problem, most people go to Dr. Google and they'll start searching stuff. And just because it worked for your friend or you read it on Dr. Google or wherever, that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And just that's where that individualized bio individuality comes in, and play around with it. Play around with the walking or the meditation or the yoga, or something I did the other day because I was super my nerves were a little too high. I got out one of my kids' coloring books and and their colored pencils, and I just started coloring, and it was actually really, really soothing. So yeah, taking it back to the basics, I 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah, I love that you said, I love that you talked about supplements, because yes, everybody wants that quick, like, what do I need to take? what do I need to pop in my mouth? And supplements are awesome. And there's a time and a place for supplements. But if you're not doing the basics, it's like creating a house without a strong foundation. It's going to crumble, and it's a waste of your time and your money if you're investing in that, but you're not investing in the other things. And you're so right on something that's therapeutic for you. For so many people, it is like an adult coloring book. I love painting. That's therapeutic to me. I think it really, and I don't know the neurology behind this, the science behind it, but I do think it's something with the repetitive motion, right? Of like painting, coloring, vacuuming, like just that repetitive back and forth. I'm sure there's science behind that, but I don't personally know it. So there has to be. But yes, that's super therapeutic, but finding what works for you and knowing that it's a journey, it's a process of figuring out, okay, well, like I said about reading, like that didn't work for me. I love to read, but I can't read at the end of the day because that's when I fall asleep. So I use reading as like an earlier in the day activity for myself to get myself awake and moving. So yeah, definitely giving it a go to figure out, what works for your individual genetics.
Yeah, exactly. So, Sarah, switching gears, let's talk about strength training and how that could really be a key player in boosting metabolism during a woman's menopause. So, could you just talk about some beginner-friendly tips for getting started?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, if you are in perimenopause or in entering menopause, and just to be clear, I I will say this because I think in my early 30s, I felt like perimenopause, like I'm not ready for that. Like I'm going to tune that out because that is for old people. That's not for me. But perimenopause is any time that we're making a transition in life, right? So it can start by age 30, normally around age 35, but it can start earlier. You're going to start seeing the signs and symptoms of things changing. And so if you're listening and you're like, oh, I don't think I'm there yet, or oh, menopause, that seems like old people, you can go through menopause at the age of 40, anywhere between 30 and 55. We're making this transition. So we're spending 25 to 30 years of our life in this transition, perimenopause to menopause. And we spend a third of our life in menopause. So if you're not there yet, just know that it's coming. We don't have an option. It is not a bad thing. We just need to know what is best to do for our body at that point in time. And so I just want to like kind of disclaimer, backtrack, because if you're not there yet, like remember this, you're going to be there quickly. And some of those signs and symptoms will show up quick. But strength training and the way we work out is definitely one of those things that we need to be mindful of changing or tweaking as we go older. And if you are in perimenopause and menopause, you most likely have been in the world of cardio it off, do all the cardio, get on the elliptical, run a little bit, sweat it out. I get that. I was there too. I created so many step aerobics classes. I just can't even tell you at this point in time in my day. But strength training is most definitely where you're going to see the biggest bang for your buck. So here are a few things. In our 20s, we start losing muscle mass. And by the time we are 30, we are losing muscle mass at a rate of 1% a year. Every year, we're losing 1% muscle mass starting in our 30s. That's huge. That's huge. And so like, think about that, right? Like do the math. How much muscle have you lost from your 20s to where you are right now? Now, if you're not being intentional, right? So if you're being intentional about creating muscle mass, so we have to, one, maintain what we have. Two, we have to build muscle mass to really reap the benefits because we're losing it, right? We're fighting here. We're losing it. We got to maintain, then we have to gain. So we have to work a little harder in the strength training realm of things. So if you are choosing how to work out, I will always say strength training is number one. If you're like, I don't have time, I can only work out 2 days a week, or you're a beginner and you're like, I don't know what to do. strength train 100%. Make that 100% your go-to. Now, depending on, if you're a beginner, if you're advanced, let's just say you're only working out 2 days a week. You want to do an upper body strength training day and a lower body strength training day, because you're going to hit those muscles harder on those 2 days versus trying to do everything at one time. If you're trying to do everything at one time, like a full body type of strength training workout, you're not going to be getting into your muscle fibers deep enough to tear them and repair them. And when I say tear them, if you've ever been sore before, you've ever had a sore muscle, that's muscle fibers tearing. That's the sensation we get when our muscle fibers are torn. We want that, not every day, but we want that every now and then, because when our muscle fibers tear, they rebuild while we're sleeping. They rebuild themselves stronger. And so when they rebuild stronger, we create more muscle mass. You're not going to get bulky from this. I promise you, you do not have enough testosterone as a woman to get bulky. So that's what we want. We want some muscle fibers tearing. And so most likely when you're doing a full body workout, you're not getting that muscle stimulation enough to get the muscles tearing to repair, to build. So that's why I say do an upper body day and a lower body day. If you're working out more than that, then yes, the full body, the functional strength training is awesome, because that's helping our balance, our stability, reducing risk of injury as we get older. And so that's really important for our bone mass as well as our muscle mass. So strength training is the number one. You can cardio if you want, but honestly, if you take out all the cardio in your life and you just go for a walk and you lift heavy, that will give you the benefits of what you want and need in perimenopause and menopause. I'll touch on one more thing about this is most women are like, okay, I'll pick up my 5-pound weights and I'll, do a few bicep curls. You want to get to muscle failure. So there are two different avenues. You can get to muscle fatigue or muscle failure. Muscle fatigue is when we feel the burning sensation, right? We've all been there. Like, you sit down and do a squat for about 30 seconds. You'll start to feel the muscle fatigue. That's the burning into the muscles that we feel, the heat that we're feeling. Muscle failure is just that. It's like, I cannot do another. You're doing a bicep curl and you're like, you come up like halfway and then you're like, you can't, right? That is true muscle failure. We want to get to muscle failure. Again, you don't have to do that every day, but we do want to get to muscle failure because, again, that is taxing the muscle fibers and creating stronger muscles. So we want both, but most women are not working to failure. They're just working to fatigue. And so if you are strength training right now, focus on picking up maybe some bigger weights that will work on failure.
I am learning so much from you, Sarah. I did not realize that, because I do have my weights and I just go until, I have the fatigue and not the failure. But now that you have explained this to me, I will now start to work my way up towards the muscle failure. That is so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. And we don't necessarily want to go to failure because we don't like that word failure, right? So you can call it whatever you want, but you just want to work until like you tap out, like tapped out right here. So yeah, definitely.
Wow. So I have another kind of like curious question. So if you could, knowing what you know now, if you could go back to your earlier self in your 20s, what would you have done differently to help minimize the symptoms later on in life in regards to the perimenopause?
Oh my gosh, this is such a loaded question. Do you want me to give you one or all the things?
Just maybe your top one or two.
Okay. I did it all wrong in my 20s. If I were to give you two things, it would be manage my stress, because I was not doing a good job managing my stress. And it really started to hit me in my 30s. And I had to go back and relearn strategies to calm myself, to say no to things that weren't priorities in my life, to learn how to sleep appropriately again. So definitely I would learn manage your stress, and that is a top priority, and sleep is kind of bucketed in that, and telling my 20-year-old self like that is important, don't discount the sleep. um the second thing is I would tell myself to stop under eating. um and I've said that snowball effect, but it really is that snowball compound effect, where when we're under eating, again, our cortisol is high. We go into that fight or flight mode. When you're under eating, it's not serving us well. I would tell myself in my 20s, you need to prioritize protein in your diet, get plenty of protein because that helps build our muscles that we are talking about now. And so if I had known that in my 20s, I would have been on the right path of eating sufficient protein versus now I'm in my late 40s now, but in my mid 30s, I was trying to get 100 to 120 grams of protein a day. And that's not easy to do at that point in your life. I'm raising babies and doing all the things. And I wish I had done that in my 20s and understood how important, especially protein is, and that carbohydrates in the form of any fruit and vegetables, bananas and potatoes, are included in that are fine, are really fine. And we can eat those, and we should eat those. So those are the two big things I would say is really manage that stress and just stop under eating because it's not serving us.
Yeah. And, I'm so glad that we're having this conversation and really bringing awareness to everything that we're talking about, because I think as we're in perimenopause. A lot of us have, teen daughters and teen sons. I know I have one of each.
Mm-hmm.
And just really being able to teach them now, okay, this is, things to potentially look out for. And this is what you want to do so you don't, possibly fall into that cycle. And I'm just all about bringing the awareness, especially to like the younger generation, especially like the younger girls, because I hear so many stories of, oh, like from older clients, like, oh, I had like PCOS when I was 14 and I didn't know it. And I just thought that was a normal thing. And I think by doing these things, getting the rest, eating the nutrition, eating, the protein, fiber, and fat, what we do when we are younger is definitely going to affect us in our older years. So to make that transition a lot smoother, let's, start now, opposed to being in the thick of it and being like, oh my gosh, I got to start now. But again, caveat, it's never too late to start.
No, it's not. It's never too late to start. And I love that you brought that up because I have two teenage daughters and a 12-year-old son. So, yes, I'm right in the middle of that. And my kids are competitive dancers. And so I help out and do some conditioning with them at their dance studio. And those teenage girls are they want to know. They want to know what to do and what not to do. And I love that for this generation. They're way more aware of what is out there and what's happening in their body. And I see it a lot of different places. And I just love that they are, trying to soak up all that information that we didn't know when we were growing up. The other part of that, because I work with the women that have these kids, the women in perimenopause and menopause, is when we know better as older women, then we have the knowledge. We don't necessarily automatically do better when we know better, but when we know better, we have the knowledge to be able to relay that to the future generations. And so when I am teaching that to our women, we have this conversation a lot in our membership of, how do I approach this with my teen daughter without it sounding like, body image issues, no body dysmorphia, anything like that. And it goes back to just teaching them. They just had the knowledge. Just let them soak it up in their head of, okay, this is what this food is doing in my body. This is how it can serve me. There's a time and a place for the processed foods, but this is what's happening with the proteins, the fats, and the carbs and whatever in our body. And so, it's twofold, right? Our kids are learning, but our women are also learning to help teach that future generation. And I just love that full circle moment.
So, if we could just talk about nutrition and how to navigate different diets when we are going through perimenopause and menopause.
Yes. And there are so many diets out there, right? There's so many ways that you can eat and do's and don'ts. And I will say that there's not, I'm not going to bash one or the other, because there are places, there are times where, maybe keto works really well for someone for a certain reason. But as a general rule for perimenopause, menopausal women, number one, we have to get more protein. We talked about that muscle synthesis. We talked about how important it is to grow those muscles. Strength training is one way to do that. Sleep, we're helping to repair and reset our body. But if we're not fueling it with enough protein, it's not going to build the muscle. We're kind of like butting heads. So we have to eat more protein. And, when I say this, so get ready. When I say this, most women are like, what? But you should be eating about 1 gram per body weight that you are currently. Now, if let's say you're vastly overweight, let's say you're 100 pounds overweight right now, you want to look at what your ideal body weight is, like for your age, for your height, what's your ideal body weight? So I'm 120 pounds. And so I eat about 120 grams of protein a day, sometimes more than that. If I am really on a strength building phase, then I will eat 130 to 140 grams of protein a day. Now, if you're like, wow, I don't even know how much protein I have. Just track it. Like, you don't have to track all the food that you eat, but just start tracking your protein and think about eating about 30 grams of protein at breakfast, at lunch, at dinner. That's going to give you at least 90 grams of protein a day. And that's getting you on a good track. So if you're like, I have no idea, just start tracking it and see. But at bare minimum, every single woman in perimenopause should at least be eating about 100 grams of protein. That is first and foremost. The second thing is that fruits and vegetables should make up the majority of your carbohydrate intake. And it's crazy, but a lot of women don't even understand that a fruit and vegetables are carbohydrates. So your berries are carbohydrates. Bananas are carbohydrate too. So is spinach. So is zucchini. So all of our fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates. So when you're looking at your plate, about 30 grams of protein, at least a fist size of protein on your plate. And then you want to fill half of your plate with fruits and or vegetables. And then the other quarter of your plate that you have left, you can have something that is more of like a grain, like a rice or a quinoa or something like that, if that's something that you like to have in your diet. You do not need to deprive yourself in perimenopause and menopause. So if you're like, I really love, having rice, awesome. You can have rice. In our membership, we talk a lot about living a lifestyle sustainability without deprivation. And so this is huge for us. When you fill your plate with that much protein and then fruits and vegetables, you don't even really have a whole lot of room in your belly for anything else. But on that same note, we also leave, we're called burn fat and feast for a reason. We have a day of feasting where you can eat whatever, processed foods, alcohol, whatever it is you want, you can have that. So when we're talking about, a great approach, it's an approach of food freedom at this point in your life, of getting enough of what your body needs and leaving like tiny slivers of areas of like, I really love this. I love dark chocolate. And so I have dark chocolate almost every single day of my life. So I want to leave room for that. And so know that you do not have to deprive yourself of any macronutrient or any food if you're getting enough of the other things. And I will always lead with prioritizing protein.
What is your opinion when it comes to protein? Animal protein, or because I know animal protein obviously is like very superior, but I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'll just get my protein through a protein powder. Could you
Yeah.
just kind of talk about that?
Yeah, great question. Yes. So animal protein versus plant-based protein. Animal protein has all of our essential amino acids. Plant-based proteins do not. So animal proteins are what we call complete proteins for that reason. So the plant-based proteins are incomplete proteins because they don't have all of the essential amino acids, so depending on what it is, some will have, one or two essential amino acids, some will have others, whatever. So that's the beauty of the animal protein. It's like all in one, right? Like, here we go. We got all of it right here in this chicken, in this fish, and whatever it is. So if you are getting animal protein and you're adding in some plant-based protein or some protein powders or some collagen, now collagen is derived from animals, but if you're adding some of that in to reach your protein goal, awesome. You can do both. You can do a combination of both. I'm a big advocate for animal proteins for that reason, to get all the essential amino acids. Now, we have members in our community who are vegetarians, and they don't have animal protein in their diet, but they're getting a lot of variety. So if you are plant-based, you just have to be really intentional about eating legumes, having your protein powder, spinach. Like there are vegetables even that have protein in them, and so being intentional about what you're picking for your vegetables to make sure you get all those essential amino acids.
Yeah, that's awesome. And thank you just for kind of like explaining and clarifying that. So if you had somebody come up to you and say, Sarah, you know what? I am in perimenopause. I think I'm about to hit menopause. There's so much information on the internet. Where do I start? So if you could just talk about a really good, easy entry point.
Yes, there's so much information. It's such a double-edged sword, because the information is everywhere, but it's hard to know what to trust, right? First of all, I tell all of my clients that we have to start with a baseline. We don't know what the baseline is unless we have some numbers to go on. So if you have not gotten blood work done, that's your baseline. We need to know where we're starting. And so then we can kind of gauge where we go from there. So if you don't know, where your iron is, if you don't know if you're deficient in magnesium, if you're sensitive to different foods, we have to have that baseline. So step one, get a full blood panel done of all your blood work, hormones included, to see where you are. Because as we're in perimenopause, our estrogen, progesterone, testosterone is going up and down, up and down, up and down. It's not just slowly declining. It's all over the place. And so once we get to menopause, though, like everything kind of slows down, right? But in perimenopause, it's all over the place. So if we don't have that baseline, and then suddenly we're like, oh my gosh, now I'm so irritable and I don't know why. And then you get your blood done again and you're like, oh, well, my progesterone is low. Then that could be a reason why. So that is always the first thing. The second thing I will say, just basic, go basic, get the sleep, de-stress yourself, move your body. And if you're confused about like, oh, what does that even mean to do upper body strength training? Just move. Try to get 6,000 to 8,000 steps in a day to move throughout the day. Once you have the foundations of sleeping, of just moving without having to spend any money, go outside, take a walk, and eating whole foods 80% of the time, proteins, fruits, and vegetables. You have those basics down, then you can start adding layers in. Then we start stair stepping it. Then we start talking about, okay, now how can we increase your metabolism even further? And what does a strength training program look like? And how can we take your food, this foundation of eating good food, and manipulate it a little bit? We do some intermittent fasting in our program. So we're we're stair stepping, right? Get started at the basics, and then we can start talking about what intermittent fasting is, how that can be beneficial to gut health. What is carbohydrate cycling, how you would do a high carb and a low carb day. And so without being overwhelmed, just start at the very, very bottom and ask yourself the clarifying questions of what isn't working for me right now. We don't take the time often, like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. We just go to this frantic, like, I don't know, everything feels like it's crumbling around me, right? And so if you take a second to set aside and think, okay, what's not working? How am I feeling now? And maybe what has changed? Then it all starts making sense. You don't have to do everything. And I want anybody listen right now, I want you to understand that, yes, there's so many pieces that you can do and layers that you can add in. But when you're getting started, you only have to find the one thing. And I call that the first domino. The one thing, that very first domino, if you have your dominoes lined up in a line, what's that one first domino that when you start leaning on it, when you start doing that, putting pressure on that first domino, everything else starts falling in place. And it feels more manageable because you've created some habits and then you can start stacking them on top.
Exactly. I love that. I love how you just make it so easy and so simple, because it is so easy just to get overwhelmed. And like you said, I don't know, I don't know. Just, and that's what I say, like, to just start with the basics. If you get overwhelmed, if you get confused, go back to the basics, because the basics will never lead you in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll say this really quick, but I have recently, through perimenopause, made a drastic physical change myself. And so many of my members are like, "What? Wait, are we doing something different? What's happening? Why is your body changing?" I'm like, "You guys, I had been wearing myself out mentally. I was working excessively. I wasn't sleeping well. I was not managing my stress, the stress of, just personal life, teenage daughters, work. I was letting everything eat at me. And I de-stressed and I started sleeping. That's what I did. That's what I did. And so, I just want to say that because we're all looking for the thing, right? The magic. That was the magic. I de-stressed and I slept. And it changed my body physically. And so don't discount going back to the basics.
Exactly. So I want to hear more about your membership.
Oh, okay. So our membership, Burn, Fat, and Feast, our membership is set up in 3 different phases. We walk our members through, and of course, it's for the woman in perimenopause and menopause, but we walk our ladies through. The first phase is called Heal, the healing phase, where we're healing our body from the inside out. We talk about mindset, a lot of what we talked about earlier of like calories in and calories out. Like, how do we stop that thinking, right? The mindset piece. We talk about gut health. We dive into the nutrition fitness from the get-go, but a lot of our educational training is around that. So our membership includes educational training because that's the power. The knowledge is the power. And I want our women to understand what's happening and what they're doing and why they're doing it. So that's the first phase. That's 6 weeks. And then the next 6 weeks is phase 2. That's the fuel phase, where we have like primed our body to fuel it for success. And so that second phase, I always say, that's when you start to kind of see the differences, right? You're feeling it, but other people don't see it. You're trying to see some of those physical changes in that second phase. And that third phase we call Ignite, where you're just igniting further and further and further along your journey. And so we have members that have been with us for 6, almost 7 years now since we started. So we're constantly growing and changing and learning inside of our community. So it's fitness, it's nutrition. We do meal plans, the educational training piece, the community aspect is huge for us because, as you know, as women, we don't talk about this enough. We don't talk about what's happening in perimenopause and that it's just part of life. Like, we don't talk about it enough. It's one of those things. It's like, well, yeah, you're just not going to feel good. Well, that's just part of it. No, 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 no. That's not what we're talking about in our community. We're talking about how we can thrive through this. So, our ladies are they're amazing, and it's not because of me. It's just because we attract amazing ladies that are so supportive with each other, and so yeah, that's what our membership's all about.
Is your membership, is it a virtual membership or do they have to physically be there?
Yeah, good question. It's virtual. So everything is done inside of our app. And so our workouts are on demand. We also do a live workout every Saturday morning. So that's just kind of like a bonus for our members. They can kind of see everybody in person virtually. But all of our recipes are inside the app, the meal plan, the educational training videos. Again, that's all on demand. So, we have ladies all over the country, actually all over the world across seeds too. So time zones, are different. So everything's on demand there as well as our community. But we do get together as a big community once a year. We have a retreat. We also have communities across the country where we have pockets of members that get together monthly in person. So I'm a big advocate for community, whether it's online or in person, and putting it all together is just like beautiful, in my opinion.
That is so awesome. And I am going to put all of Sarah's contact information into the show notes. So if you are interested in joining her membership, please look into that. Now, Sarah, do you do any one-on-one coaching at all?
I do, yes. And
Okay.
so obviously that's we do a consultation first, and then I just customize whatever it is that a woman needs. I do this also, just side note, for a lot of teenagers because of where I am in life as well. And so it's either nutrition, it's fitness, or it's all of the above, depending on what each client needs.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so like I said, I'm going to put all of Sarah's contact information within the show notes. And you also have your own podcast called Burn, Fat, and Feast. So be sure to check that out because she has a lot of great episodes. And I just want to say thank you so much for just being here and talking about, perimenopause, menopause, nutrition, sleep. It's been all golden nuggets that you have shared. Until next time, everybody, stay well. Wait, don't go just yet. If you like today's episode, please leave a review. This way, the message of health and wellness can get shared with others. If you ever want to hang out, you can find me on Instagram at Balance Health Now. Until next time, stay well.